You'll hear people talk about luck. How lucky was Rafa Nadal,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Sure, he put every ball in and the other guy missed. What bad luck. No, it wasn't luck. It was hours and hours of training.
That's Luis de la Fuente. He's the coach of the Spanish Football World Cup finalist team. And in this clip, he's talking about how he doesn't really believe in luck in sport, and that it's a lot about practice and about just getting the motions down to consistently be improving yourself, getting the hours and hours and hours of effort that it takes to get to the best at the highest levels. He'd know the difference more than most, given how much he's accomplished in his career. And I wanted to walk us through how he actually got here.
The Spanish team. It's been everything. Not a dream, because I never even dreamed of it. I'm a practical man. I go day by day, always wanting to outdo what I did today. Better tomorrow. And more, and more. And that more is what carried me to where I am.
So here he's talking about this mindset of the fact that, getting the big Spain job never really crossed his mind. It would be kind of like a dream. What he did have in his mind was a plain, stubborn strategy, which is be a little bit better today than you were yesterday, be a little bit better tomorrow than you are today, and then just wake up, do it again, and do it again, and that's what gets you to ultimately wherever you want to go. This reminds me of a talk that Stephen Bartlett, who is the famous podcast Diary of the CEO, is something that he runs, which he gave in San Francisco at the end of last year, and I was there for that in person, where he said, look, the rest of the world is focused on the big things here that are cool that they want to do, but that they never get to. We are focused on the 0.1% improvements that are like on the floor in front of us, and it's not below us to stoop down and pick those up, but do them on a daily basis, day in and day out. And so this reminded me of that same sentiment.
They always ask him if it's you. I didn't have a coach until I was 15. It means that it was us, not me, our whole environment. All of us who are dedicated to sports, we were totally in control. We were tough. It was horrible playing in the street against a wall, against a fence in an era. And we played games that lasted endlessly. At 10 or 12, you were already playing against 18-year-olds. There were no complaints then. And someone would come up and hit you a lot and throw you down. You had to get up, because if you complained, they wouldn't let you play the next day. So that's the
here's where that hardness got made, right? Where he's saying, look, in the beginning, you had nothing to play with. You were playing against the wall. Then he's 10, 12 years old playing against 18-year-olds who are just coming in and shoving him to the ground and, in a way, bullying him. And you just have to get up and play, because if you complained, you just wouldn't get picked to play again. So you get knocked down, you get up, and you have to keep your mouth shut, regardless of how in the moment you might feel unfair or hurtful it was for him.
Think about going into fashion, which was kind of the sector your family was involved in. At one point, yes, because when I finished football, I wasn't sure I wanted to be a coach. I quit football in a very drastic way. I said, I'll retire from football from one day to the next. And I didn't know what I was going to do right away. I finished my football career, and since we had a family business, I really liked fashion. For a moment, I thought about staying involved in the world, the family business with the fashion theme, but then, due to circumstances that happen in life, I got back into football thanks to a teammate, and until today I started step by step, going through the stages. As I say, I saw that I liked it, that I liked it, that I liked it, and we're still at it.
Again, that rhythmic theme of getting better, liking it. He seems to take almost this incremental approach to things, where he says, look, I'm just working on it day to day. Again, what we just talked about. And this is also fascinating, right? Where he almost didn't enter the world of football again because he was considering joining his family business in fashion, which happens to be one of his other passions. Fantastic, fascinating insight into his journey here. I think the next thing I want to focus on really is something that a lot of people might not even know about, which is there was actually a period of time where he went through unemployment for a long period of time. Let me play this clip.
Well, I went to Labas, and since then, 18 months unemployed. Which you have to say, is that the hardest time you've had as a coach? As a coach and as a person? Yes. 18 months jobless with 3 kids. Watching month after month pass by, a year goes by, and you start counting unemployment. It's running out now. And above all, I also found myself outside the coaching circle, and there was no way to get in. And those were very difficult times that I took advantage of to educate myself more, to travel more than ever more. I traveled all over Spain, watching all the coaches game, gathering information. And then I had, a series of circumstances and a news story, an advertisement. You can't pretend it was 2 lines. God, it was 2 lines. In the national team, the lower categories are looking for a coach. And that's when the light went on for me. In other circumstances, I would have read the newspaper. But at that moment, I am Catholic and I have faith. I believe that things don't happen by chance. And there was a signal for me to call, and that's it.
De La Fuente was unemployed, 18 months out of work, 3 kids at home, unemployment benefits dwindling and running out. He had no way to get back into coaching, and he sees this tiny ad, almost like in the classifieds section. Here's where you see a glimpse into his faith, into his strong belief that things don't just happen by chance, that sometimes you're getting a sign or a signal to do something. Sometimes opportunities are showing up for you, and that a lot of it in his belief is divine providence in terms of what has happened in his career.
Right? Yes, but they already know. They can see what they can leak or not. They might come into the office and say, man, I'm okay, Kyle. Mister, I said, I've seen. And I say, is it good or bad? He says, it's not good. I say, I don't want to know. That's how it stays. The night after Scotland's second game.
Basically, what he talks about there is that he used to read and watch and hear everything. And at some point, he basically stopped doing so and wanted to be free to make his own decisions. And it takes me back to the other video that we made about Thomas Tuchel, who is the English coach, which he doesn't want to be reading or watching what other people are saying about the team, since he trusts his own instincts and he wants to work with his own team, including other coaching staff, instead of reading random strangers' advice or opinions, right? If he's going to make a mistake or get something wrong, he wants it to be his own mistake with no outside voice really planted in his own head around that topic.
Across this whole journey, you kept 2 messages from the very start. One was family, the other was the raw material, the players themselves. At first, some people even took those messages as a bit of a joke. But beyond the football, beyond being one step from making history again, when you step away as coach years from now, will what you're proudest of be the family and truly knowing that raw material?
Antonio, when I arrived, remember I told you one of my strengths was exactly this, knowing that raw material, knowing the players. I believe it's an important quality, myself and the whole coaching staff alike. And why? Because we've worked with them a long time. We knew the present and the future of Spanish football like very few people do. And having said that, that matters enormously.
So before the senior team, De La Fuente spent years inside the federation's youth setup, moving through age groups, winning European titles at under 19, under 21, and keep that in mind because we'll come back to that under 21 sentiment in a little bit, and taking the Olympic silver in Tokyo. So his strength, he says, is always knowing the raw material, having worked with these players so long that he had a lay of the land for the foundations of the Spanish football potential, right? Not just the players that are at the very top, but the players that are coming up through the system. And it kind of almost reminds me of the way that the system works in Japan, where every single football player is tracked. Obviously, he's not saying that that's what was happening, but him having been in the trenches there prepared him almost better than anybody else in terms of how well equipped he was to then go take this experience, take this knowledge, take this kind of almost X-ray vision into the whole nation's potential to the bigger job ultimately.
The country and in sports and in football especially, we have walked with our head held high, and we have achieved and will surely achieve successes.
When I become a player in 2022 in charge of the national team, I said at the presentation that I would love to recapture the spirit 2010 when everyone, all of Spain, felt proud to be Spanish, unity, that bond between all the fans and lesser fans, people who only felt too proud to be Spanish because the national team had won both in 1910 and
Notice that, what does he say, right? He says when he got the job, what he said was he wanted to get the country back together the same way that they felt back in 2010. I mean, he isn't naming a trophy. He isn't naming a tournament. He's just saying the same way that moment bonded the country together. Both people who are diehard fans and followers of football, but also day-to-day people who barely follow it. That same philosophy is driving them. And even this time around, you will see that sense of motivation around wanting to bring that country together behind this shared sense of accomplishment, ambition, of striving, and even the fact that they've gotten to the point where they're in the finals of the World Cup.
In this case, beyond winning the title, which is obviously what puts a shine on all the work done in the shadows over many months, what can satisfy you most is staying true to an idea. The road we walked, the way we walked it, to arrive with a real chance of being champions in a very hard final against the enormous rivals we had to get past the whole way.
So this next clip is more recent, right? Which is filmed after they've won Euro 2024, and you can hear a different confidence in his voice. Beyond the title, which obviously, is the ultimate prize, you see him here talking about the satisfaction that comes from staying faithful to the idea, to the overall strategy, to the overall path that they had charted out. And despite having a very difficult tournament and a very difficult final, the fact that they were able to get it across the line in the end.
Coach, I'll confess something. Yesterday, you were on the evening news, and my colleagues at the hair salon, my colleagues in makeup, they told me...
Not much.
Not much at the salon, but they were paying attention. And they told me you surprised everyone yesterday with how sharp the coach is. How does the coach take care of himself? In this process of maturity you talk about, you've evolved in a lot of ways. I even hear you fast now and then. Where are you right now, personally?
Well, in the best moment of my life, in a lot of respects, I'd say in every respect. Maturity matters enormously. Knowing what you want, knowing how to handle any situation that comes up, knowing how to live up to what you represent.
So he's asked how he is, and obviously he's been through difficult stretches in his life, even talking about the period of unemployment where he wasn't sure what his future was going to look like. But now he seems to have this sense of satisfaction and contentment, where he knows what he wants. He knows how to stand for himself, whatever the job throws at him, and you can kind of see that being reflected in just the way that he's talking and carrying himself even.
National team, my country. I'm happy. I've always been happy. I think you've heard me say more times that when I got the U19s, I was happy with the U19s. I was happy. I got the U21s.
Sometimes you are less happy, but in general, you've always been happy. You were once a little bit. You needed to be recognized for what you later get.
But it's also legitimate to demand some affection. I've always had it, but it's true that sometimes you want a little more. And I'm talking about affection. Fortunately, I have had it, but I insist it's legitimate to want more. Right now, I'm full of satisfaction, recognition, affection, support. I mean, it would be unfair, and I'm not if I demanded something more. I'm happy because I have everything I want. And
So 2 points I want to highlight there. One is he says, look, when I was coaching under 21, I was happy. I'm happy now. And I think that is such a fantastic point to internalize, right? Because often we can get into this mindset, and there's some other interviews that I've seen from other personalities that I'll highlight in another video, where when we achieve something, or only if you're at a certain level, only if he's coaching the national team is when he's going to be happy. But really, really important there to catch what he said, which is, I was happy when I was coaching under 21, and I'm happy now that I'm coaching the Spanish national team. And I'll be happy tomorrow if I'm coaching like Inter Miami or some, you know what I mean, something future in his career. So practicing contentment throughout his career, wherever he was. Again, that notion of daily contentment and daily betterment of yourself without being so fixated on this like future goal and future idea seems to be a big part of how he manages to keep his head straight on his shoulders and bring that to his life. But the second part here is also where he says, like, from a person who's so composed and carries himself a certain way and has a certain stature and posture, he does admit, like, look, it does feel good to have people's affection, people's care, and like he's obviously feeling that right now and is in a pretty happy position with that. So that's the arc of Luis de la Fuente, a boy growing up in a town where he never thought that this would happen. Someone who has been through his own challenges and someone who strongly believes in faith. Three things to me stand out here. I think one is his clear conviction that you should not be willing to give your power away to just luck, right? He believes in just exercising your right to free will and determinism, like practice. How do you dedicate yourself to the craft in such a big way that you completely minimize the role that luck may have in that? Second is this idea of practicing contentment and happiness wherever you are, right? So whether you're coaching that like high school team versus whether you're coaching the national football team, you have to be practicing contentment in the round that of life that you're in right now. Otherwise, even if you get the thing that you really want, you're not going to be happy because you didn't learn to practice that contentment muscle. And then the third thing, which I think is super important, is that striving to be better, but also not putting crazy expectations on yourself in terms of what you can accomplish in a short amount of time, right? So again and again, we see him talking about this notion of like, oh, I took this job and like I liked it and I liked it and I liked it and I kept going. Or I wanted this goal and I just made this philosophy of picking something and getting better and getting better and getting better. And again, I think that incrementalism is how we compound, right? But it's also something that can get monotonous once it loses its novelty. And I mean, therein lies the challenge and the rub. So we went through all this using a product that we have built called SKIM. It helps you deconstruct any long form content. And if you get our Chrome extension, which you can get at skim.plus/Chrome, you can do this for any video on YouTube. Let me know your thoughts and feedback, and let me know if there's any other personalities that you'd like us to cover next.